In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how you can identify the best population size for your local newsletter. Before I get started, I want to say a massive thanks to everybody who has been commenting on this channel. We're still very, very small, but the people who've been super active in the comments, we appreciate you massively, especially as you planned out like the next 10 videos for me with your questions, because I really want to make this a channel that serves you, a channel that helps you work out whether this is the business model that you want to pursue and helps you do exactly that in order to be able to start your 5 to 9, escape your 9 to 5, and make some money to support you and your family. Now, when we're talking about population size and we're picking a location, it's really difficult for me to just sort of give you a list of 10 things and say, this is what you're looking for, go for it. It's a little bit more complicated than that. There's a few more nuances, but I can give you some guidance. And if you find this video useful, then just tell me if there's another part of location picking you're struggling with. Leave me a comment and then I'll be able to make another video on that as well. But what I wanted to start off with is, before we talk about population size, it is a big mix of everything. Like I said, if you want me to go through any of these in more detail, I'm more than happy to. But the demographics we're looking at, we're thinking about age. What is the age of your newsletter reader? And do they have a good mix of that in the location that you're looking at? Now, you could start a newsletter from the location where you are, or you could do it remotely. So if you're, somewhere outside of the US, but you want to target a US city for a particular reason, you can totally do that. You will need to rely more on paid advertising. It will be harder for you to start. You're going to have to put more work in order to get to that first 1,000 subscribers, because your organic methods are going to be limited. And on top of that, it's going to be harder for you to form relationships, because you're not going to meet and see these business owners. They're not going to recognize you or know you on that personal level as easily if you were in the location. So if you want to start your first local newsletter, then I would say do it where you are. Okay, that's the first thing that I'd be doing. So look at the age that you're targeting, income levels. You want to make sure that you're in a location where they have some spending power, interest of the population, vibrance of the city. You're looking at any other local newspapers, radio stations, or newsletters. And this doesn't necessarily mean that this should put you off. Actually, it's kind of the opposite, but we can talk about more of that in another video. And is there a gap for local information or a strong sense of community that the newsletter could fill? So with newsletters, we don't say that we go broader, we say we go more niche. So if you find a newsletter that is already covering, all of the city, maybe you can carve out a little sub niche within that area that you could serve, or you might just decide that you can actually do better than them, especially if you're using AI. So when we do talk about population size, here are a few things for you to consider when you're deciding whether the location you're picking, that's location where you are, for example, is worth it. So the numbers that get floated around are somewhere between 40 to 100,000 in population size. Now, there are, as I said, there are going to be some variations with this depending on your target audience and depending on what style of newsletter you're doing. But just to talk generally, if you're just doing a general newsletter about a location, then you're looking for 40 to 100,000 is a good target area to aim for. Could you go smaller? Of course you could, and I'll talk about that in a second. Could you go bigger? Of course you could. But again, I'm going to talk about that in a second. Okay, now we generally say to people, don't go over 250,000. Like, if you want to target a big city, that's fine, but the problem you're going to have over 250,000 is that you're going to find it harder to create a sense of community, and you're going to find it harder to provide value to all of your readers, because that big area of 300, 400, 500,000 is going to have its own sub areas within it, its own neighborhoods, its own communities, and it's going to be really difficult for you to sit down and pick the right things to serve that particular area. So I wouldn't go too big. Now, the first exception I would say with this is, if you are going for a bigger area like that, then what you could do is you could niche down. So for example, if you're going for a big area that has 300, 400,000, you might want to just target business owners, okay, or some other sub niche within that. Now, I'm not just thinking just lawyers, I'm thinking like home services, okay? So maybe you target businesses that are in the home services niche and you help them out in some way. That way you are going to be carving out a huge area, a huge number of people for you to be able to serve, but you're not going massive on those numbers. Okay, so that's just something that you can do. Now, when we're picking this particular area, You can pick city limits, that's absolutely fine. But what you can also do is you can go for city limits plus a certain distance. So, for example, 10 miles, 15 miles. I wouldn't go any bigger than that. You go small if you want at 5 miles, but something in that range would roughly work, because you've got to think about, are people who are 15 miles away going to come into the area that I'm covering in order to see these events, or are they actually closer to somewhere else, or they just wouldn't bother making the journey? So again, this is, you have to weigh this up with sort of transport and things like that. But that's a general idea. So if you find that your city limits are a bit smaller than you want, then you might want to serve plus 10 miles, for example, in order to be able to get that number up. And then you know the area that you're looking for events within. Okay. Now, what if you are smaller? Well, it's absolutely fine to be smaller, because what you'll find is actually people out there have probably figured out how to boost these numbers, because there'll be other publishers out there, such as newsletters, such as people that sort of do community booklets or news that might come through your door. And what these publishers will do is they'll group smaller locations together so they can serve them properly. So go out there and look at your local newsletters. You can go down to sort of local newsagents shop, you can look online, and you'll find that certain areas are grouped together, or councils will do this as well. So for example, a council or a district or a borough will serve a certain groups of towns or villages, and they'll put this group together under one name. Or maybe if you look at some publications, they'll put sort of 3 names of locations together. And as long as you're doing it in a way that people are used to, then it will completely make sense to locals why you have done that. And then that will help you boost your numbers up to towards that 40,000, which is a good number to aim for. Now, what I would like you to think about is, before you rule anything out, is I want you to think about your goals. Okay. And what I like to think about is there's this book, and it's called The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. It's a great book. If you haven't read it, I totally recommend you reading it. There's loads you can get from that book. But one of the things he says in there that's always stuck with me is you want to start with the end in mind. Okay. So when you are picking your location for your newsletter, you want to think about, when I'm working on this, when it becomes my business, when it moves from my 5 to 9 to my 9 to 5, and I'm supporting myself, my family with this business, what does my day look like? Like, how many hours am I spending on this? Is AI writing this for me? What can I automate? Am I sitting behind a desk writing this, or am I going out to these events? Am I socializing? Am I getting free tickets to go and see things? Like, do I want the stress of trying to deal with businesses and information coming in from 250,000, or I'm happier to serve a smaller area that's 20, 30, 40,000, and that's still making me a good amount of money, that life-changing money that can replace my job, maybe not be, the give you the keys to the Maserati, but replace my job, support my family, but not completely stress me out. So I would really, really think about that. Now, a 40,000 population local newsletter, it can become a 6-figure business. It totally can. If you're starting in the right area, if it's a vibrant city with lots going on, it's up and coming, it's popular, then it could totally be a 6-figure income without needing a team. But you are going to be doing most of the work. You're going to be writing these newsletters. You're going to be doing the research. You're going to be liaising with business owners so you can attract them into being advertisers so you can make money. Now, you may hire at some point a VA, which is absolutely fine. But obviously, as the population size goes up, then you are dealing with more people. Even just silly things like a 250,000 city, if you were going to meet with business owners or see these events, that's a lot more traveling for you than if you're targeting somewhere that's got 20, 30,000, and then you can easily get around, go to these events, go to meetings, go to charity events, even set up your own events at some point within these cities and run them and make money off those. So what you want to do is start with the end in mind. It's not a case of, the more people I have in my city, the more money I'm going to make. It's about, what do I want this business to look like? Because that's the great thing about a local newsletter. It's just a great lifestyle business. It can totally be a multiple 6-figure income business with a newsletter targeting a population of 100,000 or less if you do it right and if you do it in a way that truly serves the community. But I would say just think about that balance for yourself. What's the lifestyle you want? Because actually, bigger doesn't always mean better. So I said at the beginning of this video, if you want us to go through anything else to do with local newsletters, then feel free to drop it in the comments. We've got another video here that you should watch if you want to learn a little bit more about local newsletters, and I'll see you in the next one.